Welcome to Time Travelling Team, the podcast where we review every episode of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Tricia.
I'm Paddy. This week we are starting off season 23 with the first arc of The Trial of the Time Lord. We will follow the Doctor and Peri as they try to uncover the truth behind the mysterious planet. As usual, we'll be discussing the Doctor, companions and the villains and give your thoughts on the story as a whole.
We would also love to hear your thoughts on this story, so as always, to join the discussion, you can check us out on our socials at TimeTeamp, that's TimeTeamp, or you can email us at timetravelingteam@teamproductions.com. Okay, so Paddy, time for the start of season 23. Why don't you take it away with the story recap?
I will indeed, thank you. Part 1. The TARDIS is pulled mid-flight via a tractor beam onto a large space station, and the Doctor exits, confused about his surroundings. He goes through a nearby door and finds himself in a large room where he is addressed by a figure in the shadows, who says they thought that he had gotten lost. The lights come on, revealing a gallery of Time Lords. The Doctor sits in a nearby chair as another pair of doors open, and a Time Lady flanked by the custodian guard enters. The Doctor asks what is going on, and the Time Lady tells him to stay silent before revealing that he is to stand trial. She then hands the proceedings over to the mysterious figure, who she calls the Valeyard, and reveals that he is the prosecutor of the case. The Valeyard tells the stunned Doctor that he is on trial for breaking several Time Lord laws. The Doctor says that he can't be put on trial as he is Lord President of Gallifrey, but the Inquisitor informs him that he was removed from his position for abandoning his duties. The Inquisitor then offers him a defender, but the Doctor says that he will represent himself. The Valeyard begins the proceedings, saying that he will show proof of the Doctor's crimes using the Matrix, the repository of all recorded Time Lord knowledge. A large view screen then appears, showing a planet that the Valeyard calls Ravalox. The footage shows the Doctor and Peri as they make their way through the forest on the planet. Peri asks why they came to the planet, and the Doctor says that it is the exact duplicate of Earth in terms of spatial access. He also says that, according to the Time Lord repository, Ravalox should have been decimated by a solar fireball 5 centuries previously, which it clearly isn't. As they continue on, Peri notices that there are no sounds of any wildlife and asks if there is any intelligent life on the planet. The Doctor says that they should find out, and they continue on their journey. Unbeknownst to them, they are being observed by 2 armed men, Glitz and his underling Dibber. Glitz says that the Doctor and Peri must die as he refuses to have competition on the planet, but they move out of range before he can shoot at them. Dibber suggests going after them, but Glitz says that they will die if they continue on towards the nearby complex, which is guarded by a robot. Dibber says they could still get to their target before them, but Glitz insists they go to a nearby village which houses the robot's energy supply. He says once they destroy it, the robot will be vulnerable, and then they can defeat it before killing the Doctor and Peri and finding their target. They make their way to the village housing the power supply, and Dibber reminds Glitz that they have to deal with the superstitious natives that treat the machine like a god. As they continue on, they see a convoy of natives. They ambush the convoy, scaring the natives into submission with their weapons, and Glitz demands to be taken to the village. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Peri come across a set of ruins, and despite Peri's concerns, the Doctor heads inside, saying that it could have information about what happened on the planet. As they go further into the ruins, Peri spots a damaged wall that has a banner reading Marble Arch on it, in a similar style to the underground tube stations in London. Peri says that Ravalox must actually be Earth, but the Doctor says that it is impossible due to the planet occupying a different space in the universe. However, he does admit that the similarities are too close. Peri insists that they are on Earth in the far future, and it is now a dead planet. Back on the space station, the Doctor interrupts the trial and asks what is the point of the footage being shown, and demands to know where Peri is. The Valeyard says that she is where he left her, but the confused Doctor says that he doesn't remember. The Valeyard says that it must be a temporary amnesia due to being pulled out of the time stream. The Inquisitor then tells the trial to recommence. Back on Ravalox, the Doctor tells the despondent Peri that Earth in her own time is safe and reminds her that all planets eventually have an end. Peri says that she understands, but still asks to leave, but the Doctor says that they can't, not when there is a mystery to be solved. Peri says that she will wait for him whilst he continues to look around. However, after he leaves, she is kidnapped by 2 natives. The Doctor continues on into the ruins, encountering a well-kept futuristic complex. He spots a group of containers on a nearby pedestal, but when he goes to investigate it, he is suddenly assaulted by several club-wielding individuals who appear from the walls. Meanwhile, in the native village, Glitz and Dibber are presented to the village matriarch, Katrika. They tell her that they are space travellers, and she tells them that such travel angered the gods in the past, which caused the Great Fire that purged the land. Glitz reveals that the fireball that hit the planet was actually attracted by the energy supply that they worship, seeing it as a malfunctioning navigational beacon. Tricia says that he is not the first person to tell this story, and she orders them to be apprehended so they can be questioned further. As they are locked up, Dibber spots Peri being brought into the village. Back in the underground complex, the Doctor wakes up and finds himself chained to a pole. One of the men who attacked him demands to know where he came from, but the Doctor demands to be released. The man, whose name is Balazar, says that he will be untied when he will face his punishment for attempting to steal water, saying that the Immortal demands it. The Doctor asks who the Immortal is, but Balazar says that feigning ignorance will not save him. The Doctor asks about Balazar himself, and Balazar says that he is the reader of the sacred texts, the only surviving books that survived the fireball. The Doctor asks what the books are, and Balazar reveals them to be Moby Dick, The Water Babies, and a book on the Canadian goose, all of which have guided Balazar's people in their daily lives. He informs the Doctor that they are in Marb Station on the planet of UK habitat. Balazar then says his punishment must commence, and the Doctor is pelted with rocks. The footage in the courtroom then stops, and the Valiard says that everything they have watched is proof that the trial should continue, and if the Doctor is found guilty, he should be executed. Part 2. The Doctor declares that the Valiard wants him dead, but the Inquisitor says that his sentence will be based on the evidence. The Doctor thanks her, and the footage resumes, showing the stoning interrupted by a squad of armed guards. The guards say that they have been dispatched by the Immortal to perform a cull due to overpopulation. Balazar says that they have taken care of it and indicates to the Doctor. The guard captain Merdine sees that the Doctor is still alive, but he suddenly gets an order from the Immortal to bring the Doctor and Balazar to him for questioning. En route, Balazar asks if the rumours about the Immortal's gigantic appearance are true, but Merdine says that he only receives instructions via a communicator. The Doctor wakes up and mocks Balazar for not successfully killing him and asks for some water, but Merdine tells him that all water was carefully rationed. The Immortal orders Merdine to give him his water, but the Doctor declines and addresses the Immortal directly through the security camera. The Immortal cuts the communication and orders his underlings to ready a service robot. The Doctor asks how long the Immortal has isolated himself in the inner sanctum, and Balazar says that since the fireball. The Doctor asks if anyone has seen him, and Balazar says that the two most intelligent people are periodically selected to go to the inner sanctum, but none have ever been seen again. Meanwhile, in the native village, Peri is presented to Tricia, where she is told that she will be married off to several bachelors in the tribe. Peri starts to protest, but Tricia orders her to be confined with Glitz and Dibber. Glitz introduces himself and Dibber to her and asks where the Doctor is. She reveals his nature as a Time Lord, and Glitz and Dibber suddenly become aggressive and demand to know if they were sent by the Time Lords. Peri says no one has sent him, and Glitz says that he may be able to strike a deal with the Doctor. Peri says that she needs to escape and tells them of Tricia's plan for her, and Dibber says that they can help. However, Glitz says that they may need to ask the natives for help if they are to get into the underground complex. He outlines his plan to flood the complex with gas to kill the inhabitants so he can reach his goal. Before he can say any more, a guard comes to take them away. They are brought to Tricia's hut, and she tells them that Glitz is to be burned as a sacrifice to appease their god. Meanwhile, the Doctor is brought to the inner sanctum where he meets the Immortal, who is actually a 10-foot-tall robot who introduces itself as Dratro. He tells the Doctor that he has been waiting centuries for his arrival, but the Doctor says that he was not the one that Dratro was waiting for. Dratro apologizes for the confusion and introduces the Doctor to his two assistants, who are currently pawing at the Doctor as they search his pockets. He tells the Doctor that he will work alongside them on a very important task. The footage is then halted as the Inquisitor asks if it is relevant. The Valier says it is proof of the Doctor's meddling and corrupting influence, saying that he interrupted the natural flow of events that was meant to happen. The Doctor denies this, saying it is pure speculation, and mocks the Valiard. The Inquisitor brings them both under order and restarts the footage. Dratros says that he requires the Doctor's aid in repairing the beacon, which he reveals is actually a black light energy converter to prevent it from potentially causing another catastrophe. The Doctor says he is unfamiliar with the technology, but Dratro demands that he fix it or he will be executed. In the courtroom, the Doctor says that he was clearly being forced to work under duress, and the Inquisitor agrees, but the Valiard says that they will all become clear shortly. Back in the footage, the Doctor says that the fault must be in the converter itself, and says he must go to the surface to take a look at it. Dratro refuses, saying that he is trying to escape, and orders the Doctor to get back to work. The Doctor reluctantly does so, and asks why water is so important. One of the assistants says that the processing units can only create enough water for 500 people, but the doctor says that there's plenty of rainfall on the planet's surface. Drafro says that he was programmed to maintain an underground society, and so no one is allowed to go to the surface. The doctor then says that he needs all their help with something, and asks them to touch the power console he is working at. He activates it, shocking them with the electricity, then flees back into the complex. Drafro recovers and orders the service robot to be sent after him. Back on the surface, Glitz and Dibber knock out the guards escorting them and Peri. Glitz gives Dibber a bomb and tells him to hide whilst he and Peri draw off any pursuers. Their escape is reported to Katrika, who gives her hunters Glitz and Dibber's confiscated weapons and orders them to be recaptured. Not long after the hunters leave the village, Dibber uses the bomb to destroy the converter. Meanwhile, back in the complex, Drafro orders Merdine to find the doctor and bring him back. However, Merdine takes Balazar into an alcove and secretly tells him to get to the surface. He reveals that he's been saving the people that he was meant to have killed in the Cullings and sends them to the surface for safety. He tells Balazar that he will find the doctor and send him to join him and the others. Unbeknownst to them, they are being watched by another guard. As Merdine leads Balazar to the exit, they bump into the doctor. Merdine asks the doctor to help them defeat Drafro and to take Balazar to safety whilst he holds off the robot pursuing them. The doctor agrees and leads Balazar away, saying that they have a job to do. In the courtroom, the Valiant says the doctor could have easily left the situation but continued to stay involved. The Inquisitor says that they will wait until the end of the footage before passing judgment. The footage then shows the doctor leading Balazar to the surface, where they encountered Peri and Glitz, who were being chased by the hunters. The doctor leads them back to the complex and they are joined by Dibber, who is also being chased by hunters. Inside, they are confronted by the service robot, but when they turn back, they find themselves trapped by the hunters. Part 3. Balazar recognizes one of the hunters, and the doctor tells the hunters to fire at the robot. They destroy it, and Balazar tells the hunter, whose name is Broken Tooth, that Merdine has sent him to the surface. The doctor interrupts their reunion, saying that he needs to find the converter. Dibber says that he destroyed it, and the doctor berates him, saying that destroying it could cause a catastrophic chain reaction due to its unstable nature. The doctor says that he will need to go back into the complex to shut down the machinery, but Broken Tooth says that they must go back to the village and forces them out at gunpoint. The Inquisitor stops the footage and requests that the Valiant edit out the more violent sequences. The Valiant says that violence is one of the Doctor's chief attributes, but the Doctor refutes this, saying that he only resorts to such defensive actions when necessary. The footage resumes, and they see the service robot being reactivated and sent to locate the Doctor. Elsewhere, the Doctor and the others are brought to the village and questioned by Katrika. The Doctor says that he has come for the converter, revealing that Glitz lied about it being a beacon. Glitz denies this, but Katrika tells them all to be quiet, saying that she must read the omens to decide their fate. The Doctor says that he must return to the complex, but she refuses to let anyone leave. She orders them to be brought back to the cells, but says that Balazar will be allowed to join the tribe. Once there, the Doctor asks Balazar to help them get out, but Broken Tooth says that Katrika will burn both him and Balazar if they escape. Glitz mockingly says the Doctor could use some Time Lord trickery to get them out. The Doctor asks Glitz what he is doing on the planet, and he says that he has come to retrieve some relic documents to bring back to his own planet. Glitz then reveals that Ravalox actually is Earth. The Doctor asks how it is possible, and despite Glitz's interruptions, Dibber begins to explain, but is suddenly stopped by the appearance of the service robot, which crashes through the cell wall. The robot captures the Doctor, and Glitz and Dibber escape, taking a protesting Peri with them. The service robot's sensor feed is being monitored by Drafro, who sees the existence of the village. He says that someone must have helped people escape to the surface and orders the security of the complex to be increased. The Doctor interrupts the proceedings and asks why they are following footage where he is not present to be shown, saying that anything in it is pure conjecture. The Inquisitor reminds him that the Matrix records all knowledge of any Time Lord's actions, but the Doctor again points out that he isn't in the footage. The Valiant says that the events transpiring in the vicinity of the TARDIS are also recorded. The Doctor says that his TARDIS is an older model and wouldn't have that capability, leaving him to ask if it has been bugged with a monitoring device. The Inquisitor restarts the footage, ignoring his query. The villagers, led by Katrika, pursue the service robot and fire at it. Peri observes this with Glitz and Dibber and says that they need to save the Doctor before he is hit, but they refuse to intervene. The robot is eventually damaged, and in his sanctum, Drafro says the Doctor must have armed the villagers to foment a rebellion so that he could access the files led by someone that he refers to as the Sleepers. Elsewhere in the complex, Merdine is confronted by Grell, the guard who has been following him. Grell tells Merdine of his suspicions of his treachery. He demands that Merdine reveal everything that he has done, or else he will take him to Dratro. Back on the surface, the villagers rejoice at the defeat of the robot, and Katrika whips them to a further frenzy, saying that they are now free to attack the complex and take all its secrets and materials for themselves. Once they leave, Peri leads Glitz and Dibber to the doctor, who remains unconscious. Glitz and Dibber say he is dead. Glitz then takes Dibber aside and says they can use the confusion of the villagers' attack to get into the complex and get what they came for. Glitz sends Dibber back to their vessel to retrieve their heavy ordnance, saying that they will need it to get into the entrance at the complex. The doctor slowly wakes up and asks where everyone is. Peri tells him about Katrika's assault in the complex, saying that they think that the immortal is dead. The doctor reveals Dratro is present and says to her that they need to be stopped. En route, the doctor explains to Peri that he needs to get back to the blacklight machinery in Dratro's sanctum. He says that if he doesn't shut it down, then there is a chance that the whole planet could be destroyed. Peri asks why they can't leave, and he says that he can't just let the villagers and the complex dwellers die. A short while later, Glitz and Dibber enter the complex. Glitz tells Dibber that if they meet the doctor, not to tell him of their true purpose. The footage suddenly stops, and the Valiard says that the rest of the sequence of the evidence has been excised at the order of the High Council. The Inquisitor says it is for her to decide as to what evidence is presented. The Valiard says that the High Council decided it was against the public interest to show the footage. She says that she needs the access to all the evidence for a proper inquiry and offers the doctor the chance to launch a formal complaint. The doctor declines, saying that he wants to see what the Valiard will produce next. The footage then resumes, and it shows Merdine confronting the doctor and Peri, shooting at them with a crossbow. Part 4. Merdine's crossbow bolt hits Grell, who had been about to kill the doctor. Merdine cradles the dying Grell and tries to explain his actions, but Grell dies. The doctor tries to comfort Merdine as he mourns the loss of Grell, who he has known all his life. The doctor says that he will try to help stop the Cullings, but he needs to get to Dratro's sanctum. At that moment, Katrika's group arrives at the sanctum and they attempt to break in. The doors open and they are confronted by Dratro, who demands to know why they are here. Katrika orders Broken to shoot him, but Dratro kills them both before ordering the rest of the mob back outside to prepare for a culling. Meanwhile, the doctor, Peri, and Merdine encounter the two assistants who had used the confusion of the attack to escape. They tell the doctor of the last reading on the blacklight machinery in the sanctum, and he says that he is running out of time. The footage stops. The doctor quips about his calm disposition. The Inquisitor rebukes him for his flippant nature, but he angrily says that the whole trial is a farce. He turns his anger on the Valiard, saying that he is incompetent and the allegations against him are weak. The Valiard uses the rant to support his argument about the doctor's erratic and interfering nature. The doctor says he is trying to save the people of Rabalox. The Valiard, however, says the doctor broke a serious Time Lord law in doing so and set in motion the events that he is now on trial for. The Inquisitor orders the footage to recommence. The doctor and Dios arrive at the sanctum, and Balazar tells them what happened. The doctor says that he needs to speak to Dratro, and Merdine takes him to a communicator. Meanwhile, Glitz and Dibber continue into the complex. Dibber says that the files they are looking for may not exist anymore, but Glitz begins to reassure him that they are, but the audio of what he has said is bleeped over. In the courtroom, the doctor and the Inquisitor demand to know what happened to the audio. The Valiard says the information is for the Inquisitor only, but the doctor asks why no one else is allowed to know. The Valiard says that it is irrelevant to the case, but the Inquisitor insists on the remaining audio being played. The footage starts again and the audio is still blocked out, but Glitz says that the Sleepers found the biggest repository of knowledge in the universe. Once they get their hands on it, they will be able to sell it to the highest bidder. Meanwhile, the doctor contacts Dratro and says that he wants to help him to prevent the explosion. Dratro agrees, but says that only he can enter the sanctum. After the doctor leaves, Dratro orders Merdine to kill the villagers, but Peri and Balazar plead with him not to go through with it. Peri says that she needs to help the doctor, and Merdine agrees to lead her to a rear entrance to the sanctum's food processing chamber. In the sanctum, the doctor says that he needs to shut down the black light system, but Dratro refuses, saying that he will be shut down as a result. The doctor tells him that the people will die, but Dratro says they only exist to serve him. The doctor tries to reason with him, talking about the sanctity of human life, but Dratro replies that it is not as important as machine life, due to humanity's reliance on robots. Dratro says that he has studied the humans under his control for centuries, but the doctor argues that he doesn't understand the complexities of human life. Dratro refuses to relent, and the doctor mocks him for his ego before changing tactics and trying to use the threat of universal annihilation to change the robot's mind. Before Jethro can respond, an alarm goes off and he sees via security camera Merdine leading Peri and Balazar, as well as Glitz and Dibber, who encountered them in the halls, into the rear entrance of the sanctum. Jethro accuses the doctor of treachery and seals the door behind the intruders. Jethro starts up the ventilation fans and the sanitation lasers for the pipe that they are in, and he easily beats back the doctor's attempts to stop him. Dibber uses his weapon to blast a hole in the wall, and they escape into the sanctum, where they are disarmed by Jethro. The doctor tells him of Jethro's refusal to shut down the black light machine, and Glitz tells the robot that they have one on their ship, that Jethro can use once the doctor fixes this one. Jethro is dubious, but Glitz says that they can take him back to the Andromeda Galaxy, but requests that he bring the secret files as well. Jethro agrees and leaves to fetch the files. The doctor goes to congratulate Glitz for his deception, but he and Dibber tie him and the others up. Glitz rigs a slipknot on the doctor's bonds, saying that he should be able to free himself once he and Dibber leave with Jethro. Once they are gone, the doctor frees himself and the others and instructs them on how to help stop the machine. He says that he can't stop it from exploding, but will instead contain it to just the sanctum. He tells them to get out once they are done, and he follows after them, narrowly avoiding getting caught in the explosion. At that moment, near the main entrance, Jethro cries out in pain and collapses, burning to the ground, destroying the files as well. However, all is not lost, as Dibber shows him a section of the black light converter from Jethro's corpse, pointing out its rarity and value. Glitz happily takes it, saying they can use it to bankroll their next venture. Back outside the sanctum, the doctor and Peri and Merdine reunite with Balazar. The doctor says that they are now free to live for themselves on the surface, and he then says that to an exhausted Peri that they should leave. As they go, the doctor says he is curious as to how Earth became Ravalox and landed in its current position, as well as wondering what was in the files Glitz wanted. The footage then stops, and the doctor says that it appears that he saved the day successfully. He says that he saved the people of the sanctum, and despite the missing evidence, it was clear that he was required to be there to help them. The Valeyard counters this and says that his presence provoked the unnecessary deaths of Katrika and several other people. The Inquisitor tells the doctor to stop talking for fear of incriminating himself. The doctor begins to object, but the Inquisitor tells him to sit down. The Valeyard says that he has more damning evidence, and once the court has heard it, the doctor will be executed. End of the story. So, the day is finally here. The much vaunted, the much mysterious, the much talked about Trial of a Time Lord, Part 1, The Mysterious Planet. So, Trish, what trivia do you have for us about this mysterious planet?
Cool. So the air date of this story is the 27th of September 1986. The writer is Robert Holmes. This is the final full story for Bob. We've discussed Bob ad nauseum in previous episodes. He will also contribute to The Ultimate Foe, but only one episode. And we'll probably maybe we might do a little bit of wrap up on Bob when we get to that point. Mm-hmm. The director is Nicholas Mallet. This is the first of 3 directing credits for Nicholas. We'll see his work again in Paradise Towers and The Curse of Fenric. Nicholas passed away in 1997. Okay, working titles for the story. We had Wasteland and The Robots of Ravalox. Yeah, I think both kind of would have worked. I think Mysterious Planet was a bit better, but they both would have worked, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's better.
So the Doctor Who theme arrangement is different. However, the title sequence itself is the same. So the visual is the same, but the sound is a bit different. As Paddy mentioned, we are now back to our 25-minute episode format, meaning this story had 4 episodes, which is basically going to keep for the remainder of the original series run of the show. However, the total length of the broadcast season remained fixed at roughly 3 months per year, resulting in about a 50% drop in seasonal output compared to previous seasons. So we have 4 stories this season, and that's it. And not a 6-parter in sight, from what I remember.
Yes.
So that's really only 16. The rest of them are 4. I'm making an assumption here, Paddy. The rest of them are 4, right?
There's 3 of these are 4. The last one is 2, and then Sylvester's run is a mix of 4s and 3s.
Yeah, but I mean for this season. So 3 of them are 4. So we actually only have 14 episodes this season, which actually is even less. time-wise is a lot less than what we had before.
Yeah.
The model of the space station that we see, it was 6 feet wide, so wider than I am tall. The 45-second long opening scene of it was the first use of a motion control camera on Doctor Who. It took a week to film, and it cost over £8,000, making it the most expensive Doctor Who sequence to date. J&T justified the cost, said it was the first scene that viewers were going to see after the programme's hiatus that we mentioned briefly the last time, and that they could reuse parts of it to, in the future episodes or whatever. Colin personally felt that the money could have been better spent elsewhere, and I kind of have to agree. It's a cool effect, but it doesn't really add any value. I don't think the space station is the center of the story, like the station itself.
No.
It's not like the arc in space. Had we had this for the arc, I think it would have been great. But the station isn't a character, if that makes sense. BBC executive producer, or BBC executive rather, Jonathan Powell, caused some hurt feelings and issues in this particular story. So obviously we have Eric Soward, who's our script editor, but then obviously the episodes have to be approved by the BBC executives, right? So it's not just Eric that gets the final say, it's not just J&T that gets the final say, they go further up the chain as well. Apparently Jonathan Powell was notably harsh when he was given the scripts to view, citing all of his concerns in a very blunt memo to J&T and Eric Soward. There was such a negative reaction that both John and Eric were both completely stunned. And Eric particularly was rattled because he held Bob Holmes in such high esteem that he hadn't really queried the scripts himself as they came in. He just assumed, oh, it's Bob and Bob's great. Which does kind of imply that Eric wasn't really doing his job.
Yeah.
It sort of signified that this could be Eric sort of began questioning his abilities as a script editor, and he would eventually leave a few months later. But apparently your man Jonathan Powell was really harsh with Bob's writing. I will say that if you pay close attention, there's a little bit of the Crotons in this.
Yeah.
And the banter is almost directly lifted from the Ribos operation. So Bob was rehashing a lot of his old material, and we said this, unfortunately, in previous Bob stories recently, that the quality isn't the same as what it was before. Now, what I will say is that Bob was very sick when he was writing this. So that may also have been part of it.
It won't be the first time. No, I don't think it's the first time, nor is it the last I would see a writer rehash the same plot elements again and again and again.
In the audio story, The Dark Flame, we get an understanding of what exactly black light is. It's not like ultraviolet light or anything like that. It's an energy from quantum meta-fluctuations in the space-time continuum, which explains why an explosion of it would be so disastrous. Interestingly, when they were originally shooting, episodes 3 and 4 were running short. So they added bits, and then when they got to the end, episode 4 overran. So to compensate, a couple of segments were removed, a lot of stuff was trimmed down. So this includes what should have been the second trial scene. It was the Valeyard observes the Doctor revealing confidential Gallifreyan information to Peri, and the Inquisitor asking why the Doctor visited Ravenlox in the first place. There was later losses the Valeyard's pronouncement that Humker and Trendle would have repaired the system problem themselves had the Doctor not involved.
Or the two assistants.
Yeah. And the Doctor noting that the situation on Roblox had endangered the entire universe. There's a couple of things there that, I think added more to the trial sequence than anything else. Colin wasn't a big fan of the script. He also didn't like all of the Valeyard comments, so junkyard, rail yard, that kind of thing. He wasn't a big fan of those. I think he sort of felt that they were kind of Like, one would have been fine, and then it just sort of kept going. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, on to our cast. So, as said Valliard, we have Michael Jaston. This is the first appearance for Michael, and we'll see him across the Trial of a Time Lord arc. He doesn't have any other on-screen Who credits other than this role. However, he did do extensive audio work, including reprising his role as the Valliard in audio stories. His non-Who credits include Emmerdale, Zulu Dawn, the miniseries version of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Crown Court, and he appeared opposite Tom Baker in the 1971 film Nicholas and Alexandra. Michael passed away just last year in 2024. The Inquisitor is played by Linda Bellingham. Similar to Michael, this is her first Doctor Who appearance, and we'll see her across the Trial of a Time Lord arc. She also doesn't have any other on-screen Who credits other than this one. However, she did do extensive audio work as well. Her non-Who credits include the Robin Hood TV series, All Creatures Great and Small, The Bill, Faith in the Future, Second Thoughts, and Linda passed away in 2014. As Katrika, we have Joan Sims. This is the only Doctor Who acting credit for Joan. Joan is most well known for her roles in the Carry On films. I think everyone probably recognises her from the Carry On films. Her other credits include The Bells of St. Trinian's, so not the modern St. Trinian's films, but the earlier St. Trinian's film. The Adventures of Robin Hood, Morsel Gummidge, and As Time Goes By. Joan passed away in 2001. As Glitz, we see the first of 3 on-screen Doctor Who credits for Tony Selby. We'll see him again in The Ultimate Flow and Dragonfire. His non-Who credits include Villain, Burnside, The Avengers, the TV show, not the MCU franchise, Love Hurts, Casualty, and The Bill. Tony passed away back in 2021. As Dibber, we have Glenn.
Before you go on, I think there was a thing where another Tony Selby died like a year before him, and it was a thing where he was like, "I'm not dead." So like, I think there was these memorial things coming. I was like, "No, I'm not dead."
As Dibber, we have Glenn Murphy. This is the first and only credited Doctor Who role for Glenn. He did have an earlier uncredited role. He was a Kinda tribesman in Kinda. His non-Who credits include Triangle, Shine on Harvey Moon, Cry Freedom, London's Burning, Midsummer Murders, and a favourite of mine and Paddy's, Gulliver and Lilliput.
Yeah.
As Merdine, we have Tom Chadbourne. This is the second and final on-screen credit for Tom. We previously discussed him in his role as Duggan in City of Death. And lastly, as Drathro, we have, the voice of Roger Brierley. This is the second and final credit in Doctor Who for Roger. We previously saw him all the way back in the Daleks Master Plan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. His non-Who credits include Z-Cars, so going again way back in our time-traveling team archives, Coronation Street, Superman 2, Shine on Harvey Moon again, A Fish Called Wanda, Jeeves and Wooster, Mr. Bean, and Bottom. Roger passed away in 2005.
Just going back to the guy that played Merdine, you said he played Duggan in City of Death.
Yes.
So that means he's Will Sullivan from the Sarah Jane series.
Oh, so it does.
Yeah. We like making those connections.
We do. And I didn't realise it, because once I realised I'd spoken about him before, I didn't bother looking up any further information.
Yeah. They know. Go through the back catalogue.
That's what that's for.
Yeah. So, thank you very much for that trivia part, Trish. I think there's going to be lots of interesting trivia parts for this series as a whole, because as we go on, we might actually talk about the analogy of a Trial of a Time Lord versus what's actually going on in the real world of Doctor Who at this time as well. But that's all in the future. For the right now, we have the character discussion. So we have the Doctor and the companions of Peri. Just Peri?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Then we have the prominent characters of Glitz and Dibber, Katrika, Merdine. I have the Inquisitor, because I think it'll be interesting to talk about her a small bit. And then I have the Valliard as a villain. Would you have him down as a villain?
I think so.
Okay. And then Dratro. Dratro.
Yeah.
Balazar, while prominent in terms of screen time, doesn't actually add a whole lot, I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you did the socials, so you have the honor of going first.
Cool.
What did you think of the Doctor?
So, new season, same Doctor, but I like it.
Yeah.
I think, we talked in the last season how Colin became very comfortable as the Doctor very quickly. And I'm glad to see that carry over into the next season, particularly with the hiatus and stuff like that. That Colin is still very comfortable in the role. I love how the Doctor and Peri are more friendly in the story. For the most part, I really like their dynamic. It really played off as like two friends who've been traveling together for a while. There is still that element of otherness with the Doctor, sort of like mental superiority and stuff like that. But that's just part of the Doctor in general. And I like the fact that, they go arm in arm, puts his arm around her shoulders. They're much more pally-pally.
Yeah.
I think it really shows the passage of time that existed between the last story and this one. And in the sort of behind the scenes and stuff, they did discuss it. There wasn't a specific passage of time, and the Doctor still says he's about 900 years old, but that they specifically played the characters in such a way that they have now been traveling together for a while, and they had extra adventures that we haven't seen, which I think really came across well in how they appeared on screen together. I do like with the Time Lord sequence how they were like, dude, you can't be the president if you're not here. Like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, they're quickly being like, we're not gonna do that. I think my favorite part of Colin's performance is the trial process. I know Colin wasn't a big fan of the rail yard, whatever. At one point he refers to the Valiard as the knacker's yard and stuff like this. Which, is still a phrase used in the modern day, and it's not used with a very, if you say someone's from the knacker's yard, you're kind of implying that they're lazy and old and worn out and whatever. It's not really any sort of positive. There's not really anything positive in that phrase.
Yeah, because like also over here, like, and like the word knacker has been kind of co-opted into like a sort of equivalent of like chav or something like that.
Yeah,
as well.
Coming from that same knacker's yard thing. So, but I really like how, like I said, I know Colin wasn't a big fan of it, but I like how he kept his energy going the whole time. I like how he's calling the value out on his bullshit, in a very Doctor way, where he had his big speechy moments, but he also was just like, I can't really do much, so I'm just going to make fun of your name because it's stupid. Which I quite liked. I think in terms of his progression from season 22 into the story, I think definitely the Doctor, the character, as opposed to Colin, the actor. I think the Doctor, the character, we can now say is settled. All that sort of post-regeneration, slightly psychotic, whatever, I think has settled. I didn't see really any remnant of that in this story. And like I said, the bits of sort of frustration or whatever that himself and Peri had was just because it's just a different point of view of a situation, which I think is actually quite healthy, and I don't think there's any major issue with that. In terms of how he got on with the other characters, I think he's okay. I don't think he had an amazing rapport really with anybody. Not like what we've seen in some previous stories where like, oh, Colin, the Doctor and this character did really well. I think it's, the Doctor and Peri are really the sort of standout for like people interacting together. I think his interactions with everyone else, they're good, like they're fine, but like I didn't really see the Doctor forming connections with any of them. And in the trial sequence, while it was my favorite part of it, you don't really see a proper dynamic building, because I don't know if this goes back to the way Bob wrote it. It's mostly the Valiard speaks, pause. The Doctor speaks, pause. The Inquisitor speaks, pause. the rest of the people just sit there saying nothing. And I don't know. I mean,
All right.
the sequence itself is a bit clunky, but I like the Doctor in it. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So for me, I think for the first story, Colin's performance on point. I mean, as if there was ever going to be a doubt on that. Like I said, I like how the Doctor is with Peri. I like how he treated everybody, that he wasn't high horsing it with anybody except Valiard, which is obviously there's just Time Lords being Time Lords. But yeah, I think it was a good outing for Colin, and yeah, I thought it was a good opener for the Doctor. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said because I really like Colin here. Like
Mm.
it's definitely two parts because you have the Doctor in the courtroom and you have the Doctor in the adventure, and they both raise some really good stuff. What I'll do is I'll talk about the courtroom stuff first of all, and then I'll switch into the Doctor and the adventure. I think there's one thing that I kind of disagree with you on, and it's no, I do agree that he kind of overplays the whole boat yard, rail yard, graveyard, because it's like just that constantly I need to get a good zinger in. But the way that he uses the knackers yard analogy, I actually quite like that because he's using it when he's giving out about the Valyard's kind of style and his evidence, and he said, like, it's pretty much that your whole thing is as tired and as worn out as the poor creatures that end up in an actor's yard. I thought it was a very good use of it.
Oh, I agree. I just don't like the phrase
Yeah,
in modern day,
no,
so it bothers me.
no. Also, whenever I hear an actor's yard, I just think of that scene from Michael's Collins, where they're trying to find a new base. But no, so I quite liked it in this thing. But his interactions with the Valyard and with the Inquisitor as well, because that dynamic is quite interesting. It's a quite interesting dynamic, I think, and we'll talk about it more when we talk about the other characters. So those parts were good, and when you're interrupting the flow of the Ravelock story, the way you have to make sure that that's well done, and this was well done. Because otherwise, it's the whole thing of just stop fucking interrupting. It's like there's a very good flow to it. So kudos on that one. I completely agree about his interactions with Peri. It's like this is this is the result of when a writer pays attention to the progression of the characters and actually doesn't seem to have an issue with the actor playing the Doctor, because we've talked before in the last two stories, the Doctor doesn't really get into the swing of things for ages, nearly 45 minutes in some cases. Here, he's there straight away, and himself and Peri, as you said, arm in arm, they have their rapport. He has his concern. He has his sort of, would that girl ever listen type moments, but he's very protective of her, which is great. They're friends. And they were meant to be friends for a long time, but writers, for some reason, just didn't get it on it. So I'm glad to see that dynamic back again. I agree that the interaction with the other characters is it's fine. There's nothing too standoutish about it. But what I really enjoyed were his interactions with Dratro, because it felt like the early classic Who stories of the Doctor versus the non-organic villain, because it raises some very interesting talking points in relation to the whole thing of which is superior, human life or machine life? And I'll talk about that when I'm more getting the Dratro side of things, but I like that. That was well done, I thought. So this is, I think it's another feather in the cap of Colin actually not only being a very good actor, but Colin being a very good Doctor. And I know that I'm kind of beating a dead horse on this one, but I always talk about the true line that you could put various different Doctors into various different scenarios, and you can kind of see them switching in here. And it's the way that he interacted with the Valyard and with the Inquisitor. It kind of reminded me a small bit of Tom in Stones of Blood, where he puts on the barrister's wig. I could see kind of that. I could see Bill, Troughton, and John all doing that stuff. Could I see Five doing it? Not really, But I think Colin did a great job of carrying that characteristic through line the whole way through in those interactions.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think like talking about the through line, because I think it's very easy to compare the dynamic and banter, banter's the wrong word, but you know what I mean, between the Doctor and the Valeyard
Yeah.
to pretty much anyone and the Fourth Doctor, anyone in Tom's Doctor. But I think actually the whole like rail yard, barn yard, and then the knackers yard thing, I think that's very Bill.
Yeah.
It's Bill being his passive aggressive fucking self, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Or even the way that he kind of like, even the way that he kowtows at times to the Inquisitor, it's that very kind of grandiose, never, my apologies, Mom, that type of
Yeah.
thing. You can see him do that with a cheeky grin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree with you on all of that. I think it's a very good first outing for the Doctor in terms of the character. We'll talk later on about the story and if we think it's the same for the story, but I think the character.
Yeah. But also it's that classic thing as well when the Inquisitor tells him to shut up. It's like that sort of like you keep doing yourself a disservice by not shutting up in favor of getting in a good zinger. Like you're just going, just stop being you for 5 minutes. So, so moving on to his partner in crime.
Yes. So we have Peri. So the first thing that jumped out at me in this story about Peri is her clothes. She's finally fully dressed. Apparently there had been some talk within the BBC that her outfits in the previous season, which in some cases were very, very revealing, were not appropriate for children's television. So now she has a long pair of, it's like a 3/4 length pair of pants. She's got a blazer. What I found interesting, I kind of had to laugh, was that she does kind of have a bit of a Sarah Jane-esque look to her.
Yeah.
And so,
especially at the hair, the longer hair.
Yeah, and so when at one point the Doctor like wakes up from being sort of knocked out by the machine and calls her Sarah Jane, I did kind of have to laugh at that. I thought it was very funny, and I love how she's just like, it's not like when he was calling her Jamie and Zoe and everything else last season where she sort of got really frustrated with it. She's like, I'm not Sarah Jane, you fucking dumbass. But there was no bitterness about it. So yeah, I mean, again, look, I'll reiterate what I said about the chemistry between the two of them. It's a lot better in this story. I will say that Nicola did a great performance. I think her accent is less annoying in this episode. I don't know if that was on purpose, but I will say it's true. And I think we see a lot of Peri's resilience. I think the fact that she was so adamant that like this is Earth, this is too familiar, and the fact that like she didn't just give in to the Doctors, like, well, you can believe what you believe, but I know what I believe. And then later on she's like, I fucking told you, you prick.
Yeah.
Again, but it's in a friendly kind of way. I would have liked to have seen more from her. I particularly would have liked to see more of her and Katrika. Just because Peri's a modern girl. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so while she isn't necessarily damsel in distress the whole time. I mean, yeah, she gets captured, but like so does Glitz and so does Dipper. Like there's no gender difference in her experience compared to the two guys. But we don't really see her driving plot. I would have liked to see her uncover more herself, which we know she can do.
Yep.
Her she pushes people, particularly once they're in the sanctum or whatever. She's like, well, we have to get at the Doctor or whatever. So all of that drive is still there, but I don't think Bob really gave her much to do with it other than repeatedly talking about what she wanted to do, but he didn't really give her any ideas on how to get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which I think is unfortunate. But like I think this is probably like general performance and like annoyance of accent and stuff. I think I really like Peri in this just as a person. I think she's a nice person in the story. She does have a little bit of her, but why don't we just leave them? This has nothing to do with us kind of thing. but generally speaking, I very rarely take issue with that because it makes sense. Like it's logical to question it and whatever. But I also love how we do carry through from last season her connection with Earth across time. Like you telling her, oh, this is like 3 million years in your future. She's like, I don't care what happened to my planet. She's still very much of Earth, and she takes that very seriously. It does remind me a little bit of, just jumping the timeline a bit, in the 2005 series, in the second story where Rose sees the end of the world, and everyone's partying and Rose gets upset because even though there's this time distance, it is still her planet and it is still her people. I think Peri has a lot of that, and I think I can't say for certain, but I think of all the time travel Earth companions, like who've seen a future Earth, I think other than Sarah Jane and Pyramids, I think Peri's probably the one who is the most worried about how did it become like this. Which I like. I like that she has something that's somewhat uniquely hers and not just another Doctor Who girl, if you get my drift. But yeah, so as a kind of rambling as well, but which is no surprise to anyone. But yeah, I liked her. I would have liked to have seen her drive plot more, but I'm glad she wasn't just a damsel in distress. And any peril she was in, Glitz and Dibber were in the same. Just there was no, there's no using her gender as a way of driving plot, which I quite liked.
Yeah.
How about you?
No, I agree. I really liked her in this one. Just the thing you were saying about like Sarah Jane and Pyramids, maybe Barbara as well in Dalek Invasion of Earth, but that I think that's kind of maybe slightly different because it's like it's not this big catastrophe type thing. But no, I really liked her. I completely agreed that I got the Sarah Jane vibes, but not just from the clothes and the hair, but also that sort of like ESP thing that she has, where she was like, no, I feel it. I feel that this is Earth. And it's like, it just gave me big Sarah Jane vibes. And it raised, like, the doctors kind of point about going, yeah, but your Earth, like, your time is still fine. And it's like, well, yeah, because I get where she's coming from, because we all have that moment of like existential dread, because you always hear people say like, oh, the inevitable heat death of the, and I gotta go, yeah, can we please stop talking about that? Because thinking about it is bad enough, then going into the future and seeing it actually be a thing, it's like, no, it's a scary concept. So I fully empathize with Peri on this one. I love the fact that herself and the Doctor are friends. It's such a simple thing, but it's an important thing for me. Because I've said before, I don't mind them when they're at confrontation. I don't mind when they're at loggerheads, but you can't treat them as if they've never been friends. Or, yeah. Like, conflict is fine, but you have to have the starting point, and then you have to have the ending point of they were still friends the whole time. So I think that we get that here. I very intrigued by the fact that when she goes to the native village, rather than, it's like this kind of weird inverse thing, because like whereas before, like with the Borad was thinking of just using her as like a breeding mare essentially. Now it's sort of taken like, here is your harem of men. It's like, so I thought it was kind of an interesting twist on things, that she's like, would people please stop offering me dicks? I don't want it.
I'll talk about that more when we get to Katrika, because I've talked.
Yeah,
I've talked about it.
So I completely agree as well that there isn't enough agency by her there. I would have wanted to see her drive plot a bit more. She does have the good moment where she convinces Merdine not to go through with the calling, like to finally get off the fence and do the right thing. And like, I know Balazar sort of echoes that, but without Peri being there, that doesn't happen, because Balazar isn't enough of a strong personality to finally convince Merdine to do it. So it's nice that Peri has that moment with him. And yeah, she's not a damsel in distress. I completely agree with you. Yeah, she gets captured, but she's like, no, I got to get out of here.
Mm.
Come on, let's just get the fuck out of here. I think she's just being pulled from pillar to post, and she's like, would people just please leave me the fuck alone? just and like, so at the end of it, she's like, can we please go home? He's like, yeah, no, you've heard this. You've heard the long rest.
And then she's like,
But,
we're going the wrong direction. And he's like, yeah, no, you're right.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. And then he's like, but there's a mystery afoot, and she's like, ah, for fuck's sake. So yeah, no, dynamics wise, and also just Peri being Peri, I was happy with this one. Cool. So now we move on to our prominent characters. So there is Glitz and Dibber, who I think is probably easiest to talk about them as a pair.
Mm.
Then we have Katrika, the Inquisitor, and Merdine. So what order would you like to discuss them in?
Okay, let's do Katrika first. Let's do Katrika, Merdine, Inquisitor, and then Glitz and Dibber.
Cool, gotcha.
So Katrika is an interesting character. I really liked her in her first scene, and then I didn't like her after that. There was choices made with her that I don't quite understand. So she's a leader of this tribe. She, says the gods are angry, but she's aware of where people like Broken Tooth and them come from. So there's a bit of a break between what she knows and what she says. And I don't know if that was intentional on Bob's part. But she's also a bit dumb. Like the way she reacts when they're, approaching the inner sanctum and stuff like that. It's like she's incredibly intelligent in some spaces and dumb as shit in others, and there isn't really a logical reason that I could identify as to why. I mean, I think it was a very memorable performance, I will say. I think some of her conversations were very interesting. Particularly, I love the dynamic with Glitz. I thought that was really, really funny. Particularly like from Glitz's point of view. The thing that I found interesting, and the thing that I said a second ago that I come back to, is how she treats Peri. And like you said, she does offer her this like harem of men or whatever the case may be. But it has a really creepy undertone to it, because she then says there's only so many women, so the men have to share. So it isn't this whole like girl boss, like we're a matriarchal society and the men do our bidding. It's, well, there's 50 of them and only 10 of us, so their needs need to be met.
Yeah.
Which gave me an almighty ick.
Yeah.
When I watched it.
It's like a reverse Mormonism.
Yeah, but it just had a very uncomfortable
Oh no, don't get me wrong, it is
tones to it that I wasn't quite expecting. Like, I was expecting to be sort of laughed off. I was like, oh well, in this tribe women are the leaders and you can have as many men as you like, and I was expecting to be a sort of like a happy clappy kind of like moment like that, and then it got really icky really, really fast. So I think Katrika was a lost opportunity. Started out really interesting, and then for me just sort of fizzled and just became a character I didn't particularly like. How about you?
So I read a thing where she was like meant to be this like Boudica or Boudicea analogy, and there are because I'm reading a series of her Roman historical fiction, and it's dealing with her at the moment, and there are parts of this where I can kind of see it, and I think it's more so in the softer moments, because look, I love Joan Sims. I think she's very funny in the Carry On movies. I love her, especially Carry On with the Kyber. I think that's like one of her best ones. But I think where she's at her strongest in terms of performance are the softer moments. So the first interaction with Peri, the initial interactions with Glitz and Dibber, when she's like softer and a bit more, okay, there's something just, I feel on edge around you because I'm waiting for you to like give a signal and someone's going to kill me. So I kind of get that. But then when it comes to the more passionate, rabble-rousing scenes, it's like, okay, she goes really over the top. And that's where it kind of starts to lose a small bit of it because it's not like, do you remember Captain Rack from Enlightenment?
Mm.
It's like, I was thinking a kind of similar type thing, but it's like, no, you're just like, you are becoming kind of like that caricature, almost Iron Gron-esque character, but without the actual cunning. It's like, we have the weapons now, let's just do whatever we want. In relation to the thing you were saying there about like her doing all the gods type thing, but then kind of being in the know is everything. Like we've seen before, like in different types of like genres of kind of anything to do with science fiction, where you can still have this mythology, but also the hard science element to it. So like technology but they are gifts from the gods as opposed to man's academic achievements. So I think it's not too much of a stretch to kind of have her be it that way, rather than almost someone that's like, all these like fucking like savages think there's a sky god, but I know that it's whatever, and I'm going to take advantage of that. That was the way that I looked into it.
Well, yeah, no, I don't think that's what she was doing. I do think it was meant to be a sort of, the analogy that comes to mind is like the people of Abydos or whatever, who who are aware of advanced global technology, but they see it as technology of the gods. I think that's maybe what they were going for, but for me, her knowledge of the underground and her understanding and the fact that she knew that all of their random extra people came from there, it's like, well, if she knows all that, then, I don't know. I think it was just the way it was written. It just didn't. It didn't hit the landing on that part for me.
No, well, I see that. So, Merdine?
Yeah. I think Merdine is an interesting character. I think he's an interesting contrast to Katrika. Because of how much he puts himself at risk.
Yeah.
We're told that he does this on the somewhat regular. So, is he the head of security? Yes. Is he the mouthpiece of the immortal? Yes. Does he order and participate in the cullings? Yes. There is no removing any of that. But you see this guy who's over the years realized what he's a part of and who doesn't like doing it anymore. And so I think there's a gravitas and a sense of, like, it's through Merdine, I think, that we get the gravitas of the story. I think we actually get, because like the other guy, Balthazar, whatever his name is, he's much more comic relief, and he kind of ruins the tone for me in some ways. I'll talk about it more overall. But with Merdine, you actually really see, like when the doctor's saying like they needed my help and all these people were going to die, it's through Merdine that we see that. I think the performance was very good. And I think, I like the fact that he was still somewhat conflicted at the end, or towards the end, where he's like, well, like, this culling is now high visibility. Drafa's going to know if I don't do it, so I have to do it because I don't have another choice. And I said I like the way, to your point earlier, that like Peri was able to talk him around and stuff like that. But ultimately, I just think Merdine was just probably, of the natives to the planet, or natives to Earth, or whatever, I think he was the most interesting of them. And he really sold, like, without Murdine, the idea of the Valeyard using this as the basis for a trial for the Doctor, I don't think hits.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything else is too comedic.
Yeah.
Whereas Murdine actually grounds it in, no, this is a really shit situation. We cull our population so it doesn't go up 500.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, yeah, how about you? What were your thoughts on Murdine?
Yeah, no, I really liked this character because like, he's that sort of, the good guy, or kind of like the Oscar Schindler type thing, where he's like, I'll smuggle the people out. And I completely agree that he's a nice grounding of, like, the two assistants, whose names now escape me, but there's that whole thing of like, oh, well, the two smartest people get picked. But when you actually see them, they're very kind of infantile, slightly robotic in their mannerisms, because I suppose they're under draft rose tutelage. And it's like, I think it's a bit too comedic. I think if you're going to go with the whole they're more robotic, maybe make them a bit less childlike, maybe a bit more, really sell the severity of the fact that they're no longer human. They're just essentially number crunchers for this robot overlord. But like with Murdine's thing, though, it absolutely is the thing, because like, you could ask the question, well, if he knows that the surface is fine, why doesn't he just lead everyone out en masse? And it's like, because outside is an unknown quantity. And if they all moved out en masse, they might not all survive, or there might be something bad happen. Whereas, like, if you keep the population to a certain thing underground, at least then they're all surviving. And then when you've got that person or people that he saves in the calling, it's like, look, you can die or you can take your chances up on the surface. And like in a smaller group, that might work better. And even like when he kills Grell, the guard, and it's like, he has this thing of like, I've known him since he was a boy. I was the one that pushed him into being a guard, kind of like to save him from the Collings type thing. And you get this thing where he's like, Doctor, I hope you're right and I hope you're worth it. And I've seen that moment in different types of movies, and it always hits. It is a tragic hit. And I think it's no different here, for me personally. And the bit where he finally agrees with Peri, or when Peri convinces him, it's like, this is the do or die moment. And it's nice at the end to see that his fate is rewarded. And I think with Katrika out of the way, and with them all going to I think he can bridge that gap between the surviving natives up on the surface and the clueless bunch of people coming from the tunnels up into the mainland. So yeah, I think he's, it's kind of almost like the Steven Tyler role, reuniting the savages with the people. But I think he's worthy of it, and I think he would do a good job at it.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we have the Inquisitor.
Yes, so I liked the Inquisitor for the most part. I thought that it was great how she didn't have to raise her voice too much. She had a very calm, authoritative presence, which I thought worked really, really well. And she has it with both of them. She doesn't just target the Doctor, she doesn't just target the Barry. She's very much trying to be a neutral party that is hearing evidence, which is great. I like the fact that she does have her little bits of soft humor. She's not a complete robot, which I thought was quite good. But I also like, to your point from earlier, that she's sort of like, stop talking because you're not doing yourself any favors. In the sense that, like, she's aware that he's getting agitated and whatever, but there's only so far she can let that go before she has to take what the words he's actually saying into consideration in her verdict. And she's sort of saying, look, if you can't say anything to help yourself, don't say anything at all, because I'm listening to you and I have to file this away and refer to it later. I think she had great dynamic as much as was possible in the way the scene was laid out with both the doctor and the Valeyard. Again, I like how the doctor sort of kowtows to her and is like, "Oh, my lady, I'm sorry," and stuff like that. The Valeyard doesn't do it as much because he's a dickhead, but
Yeah.
I like the way she plays it. The thing that I didn't quite like, and I didn't like it, was the only way that we get the episode is, I mean, I think she has the Valeyard get away with a lot, like bleeping things from the evidence, saying, "Oh, you can watch that later." For someone who clearly is trying to advocate for a fair trial, I don't think she's actually giving the doctor one. Because, and again, this is just because of the nature of the story that's being told by Bob. The Valeyard doesn't really come to a point. He doesn't have an argument. He has general statements. And let's watch the last day of the doctor's life just as an example of how he's in England. So I think there's a couple of things there where I would have liked to have seen her challenge the Valeyard more and stuff like that. But if she did them, we wouldn't get the episode. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
Because like with the structure that it has, she has to let him keep going because otherwise we get a half story. It doesn't really work.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see as the arc progresses if there's any change in her towards one side or the other. If she loses her, like I'm curious to see like how far she'll go to maintain her somewhat neutrality, in the whole thing. It's a very curious thing, when I'm watching her.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's nice to see her as meant to be an impartial character. Like that she's not this cliched antagonistic judge, because otherwise then what's the point of having the Valeyard? It's just double jobbing it, you know?
Yeah.
So like it's great to see, you know, that she has the low tolerance for buffoonery but insists on things being fair. And like if that's going to be like the true line through this entire season, I think the points that you're probably raising, they'll obviously smooth themselves out as they go on, and we'll see the resolution as to her making the decision one way or the other. So from what I've seen so far, I like her, and I am looking forward to seeing how the other parts of the trial sequences progress, with her kind of knowing that this doesn't seem to be on the up and up, but I'll let it go to, as the doctor said, give him enough rope to hang himself, where she's like, well, like, if the High Council appointed me, why are they giving you more than me to work off of?
Yeah.
So, yeah, watching her pull at those trends as well will be interesting, I think. So, moving on to the villains, do we want to... Oh, no, we're not moving on to the villains. Sorry, we're moving on to Glitz and Dibber. My apologies. It's just that... Because like, we're talking about the trial sequences, I was like, oh, yeah.
There's too many fucking characters.
Dibber.
There's too many fucking characters, story. Glitz and Dibber, I like them as a pair. I'll just talk about them briefly as separate people. I really like Glitz. He's like a space Del Boy.
Yeah.
He sort of has he's going for, I don't think he fully sticks the landing on it. Was part of what makes him more Del Boy-esque. He's going for the lovable rogue type thing. But the fact that he starts off by saying, "I don't like competition." Do you know what I mean? He has this very weird story about how he doesn't like competition. He's a guy who's, you know, he's quick with the line, he's quick with the story. You know, he could talk his way out of anything. You know, you're the type of guy who'd like fucking sell you the fucking shirt off your own back, like type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he's an excellent foil is the wrong word, but I think he's an excellent contrast to the Doctor. Particularly in this story where the Doctor was trying to be logical when talking to when talking to Thrathro, and like then you gets just lying right to his face. Just being like, I can take you somewhere and you'd be happy. Like, oh yay, great. Yeah, I think I was waiting for him to sort of sell Dibber up the river. I'm glad he didn't.
Yeah.
Like Dibber is, it kind of reminds me of our sort of Don Quixote analogy from a previous story. But Dibber is a loyal partner. Like, I mean, if I was Dibber, I probably would have clocked your man fucking ages ago. But like they clearly work well together. Dibber knows his role. Um, he's the muscle, he's the heavy, like whatever. But he's surprisingly really likable. you know.
Yeah.
He's intelligent. Even though like Glitz kind of plays it as if he's dim-witted. Most of what
Yeah.
Dibber actually talks about, and most of what he says, is actually really smart.
Yeah.
For the information that he has at hand. I think the two of them together were really funny. I think it's curious that we never found out what they were actually on the planet for. Um, but I love it at the end. Like they don't get angry at each other. It's not like, oh, you idiots, you should have found a way to get the secrets. It's like, oh shit, the secrets are gone. But hey, like that dark light conduit thing is actually bright. And then they're like, come on, let's go grab it and we'll go on to our fucking next adventure. Um, which I quite liked. And it's because it was the two of them together. So it wasn't one of them getting angry and the other one being like, oh, but wait, what about this? It was the two of them kind of going, fuck.
Yeah. Let's just loot this. Let's just like desiccate this robot corpse instead. Huzzah, money.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought they were really fun. I think they were probably, again, like if Merdine was sort of the soul of it, essentially, I think the two of them were definitely the light part, the light-hearted part.
Yeah.
I would have been happy if it had been just the two of them being the light-hearted part, and it gets that more in my overall. But I think as this sort of, not necessarily comic relief, but the sort of more campy, lightened mood of Who, I think those two did it really well, and the actors did it really well as well. Yeah, so I enjoyed them. I thought they were fun.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. Like, there's one section in it which I love, and it's like, earlier on, Glitz like refers to himself as a philanthropist, and then when himself and Dibber alone, like Dibber goes, yeah, you didn't fool him at all. Like even when you said you were a philatelist, he said, I'm a philanthropist. Don't I look like a philanthropist? He goes like, I don't know. I don't know what one looks like. Or I don't know what one is. And he says, like, oh, a philanthropist is someone that gives away all their money for the good of their heart, like really sarcastically. He goes, oh, you mean they're stupid? Yeah, I guess you do look like one. I was like, it would have been so easy for them to do this sort of like Muggsy and Rocco, Bugs Bunny type thing with them, and just have Dibber be like the dumb muscle, to like Glitz's delusions of grandeur, almost like your man in Attack of the Cybermen, the Brian Glover character. But like, as you say, like Dibber's actually very intelligent, and just like Glitz knows that he's intelligent, so that's why he's constantly like saying, "Oh, would you stop talking? You stop pouring with people." He's like, "No, like this fucker's too smart for his own good." But what I like is that Dibber is the muscle, but he is not dumb muscle.
Yeah,
and Glitz is the delusions of grandeur con man, but he is actually cunning and he is with it. So they are not caricatures. They're actually deceptively good characters in the fact that they are not the stereotypes they portray themselves to be. And their banter back and forth is brilliant, where he's like, oh, Dibber, please get the heavy weapons, my back. And it's just like going, but please, Dibber, and he just goes, shut up, we're almost there. Or like just like, and again, Dibber's whole like strategic thinking and the going, well, why don't we just take out the black light thing, to stop the robot? But if we take that out, it could destroy it. But it's like, but if we don't take it, the robot would still be there. So yeah, like it's because like you said at the top, like that this is the first of Glitz's appearance. It's a shame that for whatever reason Dibber won't be there either, because I really like them as a pair together. I really hope. I can't wait for him to give the reason as to why Dibber isn't there with him anymore, because it would be funny, I think. But no, like I think in a story that has like really silly aspects to it, they're the ones that seem the silliest, but at the same time they're actually the most entertaining, and it doesn't take away or distract from the actual story being portrayed.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
Okay, on to our baddies.
Now the villains, yes.
Yes, now the villains. So, do we want to do our standalone villain or overarching villain first?
I think maybe do our standalone.
Okay. So, Drothro is interesting when we look at the robot characters we've seen in the past. Because he's emotionless and logic driven, very much, the sort of classic sci-fi. But clearly there's something wrong with him. Do you know what I mean? Like, clearly something's gone wrong in his wiring that he suddenly has this delusion of grandeur. And it's one of the things where I don't, maybe I missed it. I don't know, because I watched this over 2 different days. But one of the things that I was sort of wish was explained more is why he became so focused on, I know the outside is functional and people can live there and they'd be able to grow food or whatever, but I have a mandate to keep 500 people alive. And that's what I'm like. I wish that was explored a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe it was, and I just missed it. But like, I think we spend so much time with him just sort of giving out and bordering people about that, like, we don't get why did Drothro go and saying, oh, it's because of XYZ? We never get an explanation.
I think it's a very brief one. It's in one of his interactions with the doctor, because I think the doctor says something about his ego. Now, as to how
How does a robot develop an ego?
yeah, exactly, in that kind of that vacuum.
Yeah, and that's the bit that I think was missing. I do love the scenes with the Doctor and Drothro, because Drothro's just so, but their purpose is to serve me. So if I'm not here, then they don't need to be either. Like, it's so crazy because there's no way of talking him out of it. I think he is a suitably threatening presence, largely driven by our knowledge from Merdine of what he has done up until now. Do you know?
Yeah.
I think his little robot boys or whatever is a bit strange. And they are strange. They're very strange. But yeah, I think, is he the best robot villain we've had? I don't think so. Is he the most interesting? No. Like, I still prefer the robot from Robot in terms of a compelling, complex robot character. But I think in terms of just a classic sci-fi robot, I think there's a lot there for people who just like that trope or that stereotype. And I think he does provide an effective, threatening presence in the story. Again, he is the one who issues the orders to Merdine. He is the one who is like, call them, I don't care. I only produce enough water and food for 500, so you're 501, therefore you have to die. It really makes the underground sequences that much more tense, because it's not that he has a trigger finger, it's that he's just like, remove all obstacles. He doesn't give a shit. So not the best robot we've had, but certainly an interesting one, and one I would have liked to have seen a bit more explanation of. How does a robot develop an ego?
Yeah. No, like, I agree. Like, I really liked him. I liked his design. His design is cool because it's almost like this robotic, faceless minotaur, like with the headpiece. And I think his thing with the doctor is great because it's this weird circular logic type thing where it's like he says that he was given the mandate to maintain the facility of 500 people for whatever, right? And this is centuries old now. He's been operating for centuries. And I think it's one of those slight Planet of the Apes type thing where it's like, as he has stayed as he is, humanity itself has like de-evolved in terms of intelligence because they're so isolated. So as things have gone on, he's like, no, there's two elements to it. It's like, they need me to function, but also like I need them. They're here to serve. They need me to function, so therefore they're subservient to me. And if they could potentially survive up there, but then they might die. Or the other thing is like that they actually might survive, and therefore they no longer need him, so that he becomes superfluous. But there's no mention of the, well, where does the self-serving switch in his head go off? But he does raise a very good point of the whole, well, like, if machines aren't important to humans, why do the humans keep making machines to help them? You know, so like who's more important? Is it the creation or the creator? And I was like, and now when we're in the world of AI and like, you know, ChatGPT and all this type of shit, like, and it's like, oh, fuck, he's got a point. Because like you and I work in an industry that there's like whole teams dedicated to, oh, let's build an AI model to take care of these recurrent, easy to solve customer problems. But if you have these AI things, you don't need to have the same employee headcount. So therefore, like, there's redundancies and all this type of stuff. And it's like, you're almost kind of creating a thing to replace you in the workforce. And it's like, fuck. You know, it's like, but I need the job in order to, you know, live my life, but I'm actively contributing to something that will eventually replace me. It's like, oh, bollocks. Draft was right. So that's what I really, really enjoyed. I think that was, for me, one of the strongest parts of that. And I think it's good classic Doctor Who. It's good classic sci-fi. And it kind of reminds me of some of the stuff that early stories from Mission Log, you know, where the phrase carbon chauvinism would come up, because it's like, see, like the Doctor kind of going, well, yeah, kind of humans are more important than robots, and Draft was like kind of logical counterpoints to it. So that's where I got the vibe of like, yeah, this is a good classic Doctor Who villain and Doctor back and forth, and I thought it was brilliant. Slightly undercut by his two pet humans, because I would have just preferred them to be a bit more robotic, because it just kind of undercuts it a small bit. You almost feel like he just wants to smack them both across the back of the head. But yeah, so no, good design. I agree that he's not like the best of the robotic villains, but I think in the last couple of seasons he's definitely been one of the more interesting villains for me, anyway.
Yeah, I'd agree. Okay, and then we have the Valeyard, who is, in my opinion, by far the weaker of the two when it comes to the villains of the story. And again, my thoughts on the Valeyard very much go back to the premise of the story that's being told.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't actually present an argument.
No.
You know, the fact that he never questions why was the Doctor on the planet in the first place. That's question number one that never gets asked, and therefore is never answered. And like, you could argue watching the episode within the episode, as it were, that like the Doctor was protecting himself and Peri. Like, everything he did was to protect himself and Peri. The fact that he protected others was an added bonus. And I think the Valeyard's statement that, like, you know, if the Doctor hadn't been there, oh, the lads would have figured out the light thing themselves and whatever, is like, cool. But that doesn't account for Blitz and Dibber. They were the catalyst in the story. Like, the Doctor could have left again and nothing would have changed. It was Blitz and Dibber who were making the changes that were driving things forward. And if the Doctor hadn't been there, those two still would have been. And they probably still would have gone through with their plan the same as they did before. Nothing would have really changed in that. So I think, like, he's trying to play the ruthless intelligent antagonist. It just doesn't hit for me. The performance is very good, but it just doesn't hit. But again, I will chalk most of that up to the structure of the story. Because in order for us to watch The Mysterious Planet, your man can't make a solid argument or skip over scenes. It's like,
yeah.
Otherwise we don't get to watch The Mysterious Planet. I'm curious to see how it progresses. I'm curious to know, like, where did this come from? He's clearly very manipulative. He's quite ruthless. Where did this whole idea of putting the Doctor on trial come from? Like, there's a lot of questions. That his actions and the way he was cutting stuff and the way that he was bleeping things out. There's a lot of questions with that, but I just didn't really connect with him as a villain in the story. But again, to my point, it's very much based on how the story is structured. And I think he's going to be a slow burn in terms of my interest in him as a character.
Yeah.
How about you?
No, I can see that. And I'll admit I'm slightly skewed in this one because I've always really, really liked Michael Jaston as an actor. Like you mentioned, like the first thing that I ever saw him in was Zulu Dawn. And his character in that is like this. He's like the aide de camp to the general leading the forces into Zululand, and he has this like cocksure arrogance about the whole thing. And like I'll explain the scene. It's really good. You know the guy that plays Thoth in Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know the really nerdy looking guy. So he's in this. He plays a reporter, and he's asking about like the sense in splitting your forces and like in enemy territory. And like Michael Jason's character kind of says like, oh well, if we were like facing a European army with conventional weapons, it's perfectly fine, but there's no need for that worry here. And Thoth's character kind of goes, I wouldn't be so sure about that because remember, if he goes down, you go down with him. And then for the rest of the story or for the rest of the movie, you have this whole thing of he's like, I need to be very careful as to which camp I'm in. And he plays it so well. And that's just like, I really like Michael Jason's performance style because he has this easy charisma where he can easily switch from hero to villain. And he doesn't make him look that much like effort. Like watching this now where he's like, I'm very interested to see what the Valiant develops with stuff because I agree he's absolutely not the best as a legal person because it's like no, you're kind of just inferring a lot of shit and you're keeping with the whole like, oh, it gets better, like I've got something coming. But the underlying thing about that is, and I think it's because of the very subdued performance he gives, it's like, oh, shit, he does have something up his sleeve. And I am curious as to see what it's going to be. And if the Doctor keeps being the Doctor, he'll fall right into the trap. And I'm waiting for the Valier to kind of say, hey, have that gotcha moment. So yeah, part of it's colored by the fact of how much I really like the actor. The other half of it then is like that. I think this is a slow burn villain that I'm very interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
But I agree that the nature of the story does kind of, we said about the Inquisitor, it does kind of cut the legs out from under them a small bit because for the story to progress, they have to be kind of dumb.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, then. We have reached the end of part 1 of The Trial of a Time Lord. That is The Mysterious Planet. So, as always, myself and Trish will give this story a score of 5. But just to remind people what we said last week is we will give the overall Trial of a Time Lord story an additional score out of 5. And we'll see if that matches up to the average of the 4 composite parts. So, for this part, though, Mysterious Planet, Trish, take it away.
So the first thing that struck me when I was watching this was, is Bob Holmes a fan of the original series of Star Trek and the episode The Menagerie? Because that's effectively what this is. It's us watching an episode of Doctor Who as a weird clip show where the clips are clips we haven't seen before. which is an interesting premise. And to be honest, it's not a premise I'm a fan of. I would rather they had, the mysterious planet and then the next one, and then maybe halfway through the next story, the doctor gets pulled into the trial, and then they actually conduct a trial properly and have talking points. I'm not a fan of the clip show. There's not a clip show aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just personally, it didn't work for me, because it undercuts the Valiant, it undercuts the Inquisitor. We don't really get to see them long enough to develop really solid opinions on them and to sort of filter out like what's happening. Like, I'm really curious about the trial, but I can't focus on the trial because I'm trying to watch an episode of Doctor Who. Do you know? I think for the story within the story, so the story of the Mysterious Planet itself, I liked it for the most part. My big issue with it is I think there was a massive tonal conflict. And one of the things that came up when I was looking through trivia notes was that apparently one of the bits of quite blunt feedback that was received, sort of contradicted the feedback that Jonathan Turner had received in previous seasons, where they wanted to have more humor and, be more fun. And like, if you compare that here, you have, sort of comic relief characters in the sense like, oh, they only have 3 books, and it's about like the Canadian Goose and Moby Dick and something else. And it's like, okay, that's like, haha, it's very funny. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, these people are really that stupid. And then you have, obviously the sort of comic relief moments with Glitz and Dibber and whatever, but then that's undercut with very serious stuff. Again, reading as a character in general, the way Katrika basically sort of implied that, like, hey, we don't have enough women, so you're going to have to be shared as a sexual receptacle for a number of men. But then also, it's quite violent. The Doctor is stoned. Like, the intention is to stone him to death. When Katrika is killed, it's really quite visceral. That definitely had to be a White House letter campaign, because he burns her alive. Draw throat.
Yeah, herself and broken tooth.
Yeah, like he uses electricity to burn her from the inside out, and like her face is all burnt, and like it's really quite graphic. For Doctor Who, it sort of reminded me a little bit of what was Tom's story after Sarah Jane left?
Oh, Deadly Assassin.
Yeah, it reminded me a bit of that. Which is fine, but when you also have I Am a Great Scholar of our 3 books, Moby Dick, the other one, and the one about geese, tonally it bothers me. However, there was a lot in this that I liked. I love the Doctor and Peri's relationship. I do find the court case interesting, and I want to know more about it. I thought Glitz and Dibber were really fun. I thought that, while again not my favourite robot villain, Drothor was very interesting, and Meridian was very interesting. So, conscious of the fact that the premise of the story of the clip show within a show, and the fact that, like, that's a personal thing that I just don't particularly I didn't like it in the menagerie either. just to make it clear, I'd rather just watch The Cage. I'm going to give this a 3. I think it's a good start, but there were just things for me that personally I didn't enjoy. I don't think they were bad outright, but they just didn't hit for me, if that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. Because you can appreciate the idea of something, but the execution isn't necessarily for you.
Yeah.
It's the same way with stories. Like, for example, like, I really like the story of The Picture of Dorian Gray. I find it very hard to read that book. Yeah, so it's just like it's the writing style. That's pretty much what it is. It's the writing style. So I completely get where you're coming from. Um, this story kind of gets a bit of a bad rap. I think it's the 6th lowest ranked of the classic era.
Really? I don't think it's that bad.
No, like I agree. Like I really enjoy it. Like for the most part, I'm right there with you. Like it's great seeing the Doctor and Peri back together, back to their pre-Time Lash relationship. And it's great, as I said. Look, it's a petty thing, but I don't care. It's great to see the Doctor actually in the fucking show. As he's there pretty much, like, and he's there in the courtroom and he's there in the Ravelock sequences. So yeah, he's plastered all over this thing. So thanks, Bob, for bringing the Doctor back. The things I didn't like, I would agree absolutely that I think there's a really weird tonal imbalance for Katrika's character, because when she's first there, she's this very powerful matriarch, and then she becomes this screaming loon with a gun and kind of really ramps people up. And the twins, that could have been interesting, but it's way too comedic. Like, it's the two smartest people. Like, it was meant to, like, because that's what was the Crotons. The two smartest people they're brought in, and essentially they're melted down for their brain matter to help with the Crotons. I think that was it. But here they're just kind of like, are they taken when they're young, so they actually have no social cues or sensibilities, or are they just really poorly lobotomized? I don't know. It's very hard to gather.
There's a thing with them, and we can cut this if we don't think it's appropriate. The general vibe I got from them is that they're this robot every couple of decades gets two little fuckboys for himself. That's the vibe I got.
Cool. Yeah, you've been living rent-free in my head for way too long, because I kind of got that vibe too. So
I liked that neither of us was going to mention it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, like there's a scene from an anime that kind of reminds me of it, and it's just like, whoa, it's too visceral. Like, these two characters, no. But to their dumb, I suppose you could call them. I'll talk about all the bad stuff first, then we go with the good stuff. So yeah, those two and the slight tonal imbalance, the tonal imbalance, yeah. And also Balazar was just, it was like, I would have much preferred that character to be a bit older, because then it's like this, like, the wizened old fart that's like, well, it's like, according to the book, it's like, stop talking about the fucking books. Yeah, so didn't like that. What I did like was, I enjoyed the Doctor and Peri's dynamic. It was great to see, and it was like, yes, bring that real life friendship the two of them have to the fore, and you'll get a really good dynamic here. Murdine, really enjoyed that character because of the word escapes me now, the topics and that it brings up. The same way with Dratro as well. Like, I love those type of philosophical debates. Like, you and I have them a lot on this show. So it's great to see it here, and I think Bob did a really good job handling it. I enjoyed the courtroom scenes. I don't actually mind the whole stop start thing, because it's actually kind of, it's not, for me, it wasn't jarring to be brought out of it, kind of like, oh yeah, there's actually a court case going on. Okay, let's get back to the footage so we can see more of the court case, and then stopping, kind of going, oh, I wonder what they're going to talk about now. So yeah, I'm absolutely with you that for the show to do that, it is kind of doing some of the characters a bit of a disservice, but I'm hoping that it pays off in the longer run. Overall, though, I've given this a slight bit higher than you. I've gone with a 3.5, because I think this story, without the comedic elements or without anything like that, I still think it would only maybe max itself out at a 4. I don't think it's a 5 quality.
No.
But I think those, and I don't think it's like over the 4 quality. I think without the small thing, or without the things that I don't like, it would be a 4. But they do bring it down to a 3.5.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And go on.
No, I'd agree.
Yeah, and like it's actually, I think it's kind of nice that Bob Holmes's last full story gets a decent high score.
Yeah,
Because he's done, like, he's been one of our, he's had some misses, but he's had some great ones, and I'm glad that he goes out on a good one.
yeah, I'd agree. I think the rehashing from previous stories kind of bothers me, but also, I mean, the show has been running at this point for a very long time. And he was sick and stuff, so he gets a little bit of leeway there.
Yeah.
But for the opener of season 23, for what we're calling episode 143A,
Yep.
not a bad start. I mean, a solid 3.5 out the gate, I think, is very good. I'm very curious to see how it progresses. So next time we will continue with the trial in Mind Warp.
Yes.
Which is a very interesting topic.
Ooh. It is. Till then, guys. Bye.
Bye.